The old brass bell above the door chimed softly as Emma wiped down the last table of the evening. Outside, the city streets glistened with fresh rain, and the warm yellow light from her small coffee shop spilled onto the wet sidewalk like honey. It was nearly 11 o'clock, and most businesses on this quiet street had closed hours ago. But Emma's coffee corner stayed open late, a beacon for night shift workers, students cramming for exams, and anyone who needed a safe, warm place when the world felt too cold. Emma had inherited the shop from her grandmother 3 years ago, along with the cozy apartment upstairs and a mortgage that kept her awake at night. The faded floral wallpaper and mismatched chairs gave the place character, but character didn't pay the bills. Every month was a struggle, every repair a careful calculation. She'd learned to fix the temperamental espresso machine herself, patch the leaky roof with whatever she could afford, and stretch every dollar until it screamed. But she loved this place. The way steam rose from fresh coffee like morning fog. The satisfied sighs of customers settling into worn leather chairs. The stories that unfolded at her tables, whispered confessions and quiet celebrations. This shop was more than a business to her. It was home. The bell chimed again, and Emma looked up to see him walk in. The man who came every night at exactly 11:15. Tall and lean, with dark hair that always looked like he'd been running his hands through it. He wore simple clothes, jeans, and a sweater, sometimes a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. There was something careful about the way he moved, like he was trying not to take up too much space in the world. "The usual?" Emma asked, already reaching for a large cup. After 6 months of nightly visits, she knew his order by heart. Black coffee, no sugar, extra strong. Sometimes he'd add a slice of her grandmother's banana bread, the recipe that always made the shop smell like home. "Please," he said, his voice soft and tired. He always sounded tired, Emma noticed. Not sleepy tired, but soul tired. The kind of exhaustion that came from carrying too much weight for too long. He settled into his corner table, the one partially hidden by the old bookshelf Emma had filled with donated novels and poetry collections. He'd pull out a worn notebook and write, his pen moving slowly across the pages. Sometimes he'd stare out the Rain Street window, watching the empty street as if he was waiting for something that never came. Emma found herself looking forward to his visits. He never spoke much beyond pleasantries, but there was something comforting about his presence. Steady, reliable. In a life full of uncertainty, his 11:15 arrival became the one thing she could count on. Tonight, he looked more tired than usual. His shoulders sagged as he wrote, and he kept rubbing his temples like he was fighting a headache. When Emma brought his coffee, she hesitated. "Long day?" she asked gently. He looked up, surprised by the question. His eyes were a deep brown, kind but guarded. "Something like that," he said. Then, after a pause, "Thank you. For the coffee. For this place. It means more than you know." Emma smiled. Everyone needs somewhere to go when the world gets too loud. "Yes," he whispered, so quietly she almost missed it. "They do." Over the following weeks, their conversations grew longer. She learned his name was David, that he had a daughter he loved more than anything, that he'd grown up in a small town much like the neighborhood where her shop Saturday. He had gentle hands that shook slightly when he was tired, and a smile that seemed rusty from lack of use. David learned that Emma had given up art school to save the coffee shop, that she painted watercolors on quiet Sunday mornings, that she was afraid of thunderstorms but loved the rain. He discovered that she hummed old jazz songs while she worked, and that she saved the day-old pastries for a homeless veteran who came by every Tuesday. One night, David's notebook fell open when he stood to leave. Emma caught a glimpse of the pages, covered not with words but with numbers. Budgets. Calculations. Business plans. The kind of complex financial documents that seemed far beyond the scope of a simple coffee shop customer. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, not wanting him to think she'd been snooping. "I couldn't help but notice. Are you an accountant?" David's face went very still. He closed the notebook carefully, his movements deliberate. "Something like that," he said, but there was a new distance in his voice. The next night, he didn't come. Emma found herself watching the clock, waiting for the familiar chime of the bell at 11:15. 11:20 came and went. 11:30. By midnight, She had to accept that David wasn't coming. The shop felt emptier somehow, the silence heavier. He stayed away for 3 nights. On the 4th, Emma was closing early, her heart heavy with worry she couldn't name, when the bell chimed frantically. David burst through the door, his hair disheveled, his face pale. "Emma," he said, breathing hard like he'd been running. "I need to tell you something." She set down her cleaning cloth, her heart racing. "What's wrong?" David ran his hands through his hair, a gesture she'd seen 100 times but never with such desperate energy. "My name is David Morrison," he said slowly. "I'm the CEO of Morrison Holdings." Emma blinked. Morrison Holdings owned half the buildings in the city, including several on this very street. She'd seen the name in the news, read about the company's charitable foundations and billion-dollar acquisitions. "I know how this looks," David continued, his words tumbling over each other. "I know you must think I was lying, playing some kind of game. But I swear to you, Emma, that's not what this was." "I don't understand," Emma said, though part of her was beginning to. "I found this place by accident," David said, sinking into his usual chair. "6 months ago, after the worst day of my life. Board meetings and hostile takeovers and people who only see dollar signs when they look at me. I was driving around at midnight, trying to clear my head, and I saw your light. The only warm light on the whole street." Emma sat down across from him, her mind reeling. "I came in for coffee," David continued, "and for the first time in years, someone looked at me and saw just a person. Not a net worth. Not an opportunity. Just someone who needed a cup of coffee and a quiet place to sit." "Your daughter," Emma said suddenly. "You said you have a daughter." David's face softened. "Sophie. She's 8. She lives with her mother in California. I see her summers and holidays, but it's never enough." His voice broke slightly. "I've been writing her letters every night. In that notebook. Letters I'll never send, telling her about my day, about this place that makes me feel human again." Emma felt tears prick her eyes. All those nights, all those careful words written in the soft lamplight of her coffee shop, and she'd never known she was witnessing a father's love poured onto paper. "The company is trying to buy this block," David said, his voice barely above a whisper. "They've been pressuring me to approve it for months. They want to tear down these old buildings, put up condos and chain stores. When I kept refusing, they started investigating the properties themselves. That's when I realized they were targeting your shop specifically." Emma's blood went cold. "What do you mean?" "Your mortgage," David said. "It's held by a subsidiary of Morrison Holdings. They've been planning to foreclose, force you out so they can acquire the property for development." The room spun around Emma. Her grandmother's shop. Her home. Her life. "Can they do that?" "Not if I have anything to say about it." David reached across the table and took her hands in his. They were warm and steady, nothing like the hands of the tired stranger who'd been visiting her shop. These were the hands of someone who had made impossible decisions and carried the weight of other people's livelihoods. "I've restructured the mortgage," David said. "It's paid in full. The shop is yours, free and clear. And I've killed the development project. This street will stay exactly as it is." Emma stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. "David, I can't let you." "You can't stop me," he said with a small smile. "CEO privileges." "But why?" Emma whispered. David looked around the coffee shop, at the faded wallpaper and mismatched chairs, at the bookshelf full of donated novels and the window that looked out onto the quiet street. "Because this place saved me," he said simply. "Because every night for 6 months, you gave me a reason to remember who I used to be before the suits and boardrooms and endless meetings. You gave me coffee and kindness and a place to write letters to my daughter. You gave me back pieces of myself I thought I'd lost forever." Emma felt tears spilling down her cheeks. "You could have just told me. Would you have let me keep coming?" David asked. "If you'd known I could buy this entire block with pocket change, would you have treated me the same way?" Emma considered this. The honest answer was probably no. She would have been careful, guarded, wondering what he wanted from her. "I fell in love with this place," David said.